Okay, guys, we're back. I've been enjoying my little quiet hermit zone here in Sweden, but I woke up this morning with a very clear download, I guess you could call it. This has been happening more recently, where literally in the moment that I wake up, I will have a very clear thought in my head that I know is not mine. The message was basically that I need to make a video about this that I'm just about to do here. So here we go. What it is, basically in three parts, you have a purpose. Before you can embody and step into that purpose, you have to grow up. And growing up is when you stop living for yourself alone. That was actually the first thought that was in my head this morning. Growing up is when you stop living for yourself alone. So let me break this down. The first thing, and this is quite interesting because the first video I ever made that I ever posted online, this was like 6 years ago. It was about the idea of purpose. In that video, I talked about how every person is like a very unique key that's designed to fit in a very unique door, because we're all unique. You come in unique. You have unique life experiences that shape you in a unique way, which then causes you to have a perspective of the world, a view of the world. You have a unique lens that is unique to you. Nobody else sees, and most importantly, nobody else can see the world the way you do. Plus, you have unique abilities, unique talents, unique predispositions. You're uniquely predisposed to do certain tasks that nobody else could do. With all of these things coming together, you are a unique key designed to fit in a very unique door. And I would also claim that there is nothing you want more in life than to fulfill the purpose for which you were born. I think the people who kind of come into my world are people who have asked themselves this question at some point in some way, like, what was the reason I was born? Like, why am I here? What am I here to do? And this is like one of these itches that will just keep gnawing at you. And you probably know somewhere deep inside that unless you fulfill the purpose for which you came here, if you don't do that at some point in your lifetime, sooner or later, you're not going to die happy. So there's that. You have a purpose. Let's just agree on that there's a reason you came here. But the insights in this video, I hope, will help you move closer to fully stepping into and embodying that. What I have realized is that before you are granted authority over this assignment that you came here for, you first have to grow up. And what do I mean by that? What do I mean by growing up? I mean, if you're an employer and you have a very important role that needs to be filled in your company, you would need somebody who can handle that responsibility, someone who has the unique abilities and talents to meet the requirements for that role. And you need somebody who is mentally and emotionally up to the task, who can handle, who is willing to take on the responsibility of fulfilling that task. Yes? So the child, so when I talk about being a child and being an adult, you can think of these as archetypes. They're sort of energetic patterns that are alive within you. And you can have a healthy child and you can have a wounded child. And there's many other archetypes of the child. But three main things that I want to highlight for you today, and I hope this will make it clear why, if you still have these three things, you will never be able to step into your purpose. So the first thing about children is that they are dependent on an external authority, on a parent or a guardian, teacher, to make their choices, to make choices for them. They don't have authority over their own power of choice. So they always need to seek permission before they act. If they act without permission, there's a fear of being punished for making the wrong decision or for acting without that permission. This leads to a sense of like approval seeking, permission seeking. You always need some external approval or validation before you feel confident in your ability to make a choice, to decide for yourself about what you want to do. Taking that further, this is actually, I don't know if you've made this connection, but this is also what creates addiction. An addiction is anything where you've outsourced your power of choice, where you feel I don't have the authority here, or I just don't feel sure about my ability to make a choice, but a choice needs to be made. So you pick something external to you to give your power of choice to, which then locks you in a loop of in this area or in this situation, you're then making the same choice over and over again. It doesn't have to be a substance. It doesn't have to be, cigarettes or alcohol or drugs or anything like that. An attitude can be an addiction. Anything that you can look at and that gives you, it gives you an excuse to stay stuck, basically. Anything that you can look at and you can say, I can't move forward with my life here. Look how weak I am. I can't change. Like, look at this addiction. And it just loops. And it loops because you've given your power to it. So that's why you feel weak. The second thing about the child archetype is what we might call a survival orientation, because a child is dependent on, again, external authorities, parents, adults, for their survival. They can't take care of themselves. So it creates this, what we call survival orientation, where everything in their psyche is organized around, am I safe? And this shows up everywhere in many different ways. So even you'll notice people in social situations, if you've ever had trouble saying what you really think in a social environment, that's because of this survival orientation, because some part of your mind doesn't feel safe saying what you really think, but only feels safe saying basically what's least likely to get you rejected from the tribe. So it plays into the social dynamics, but it also plays into everything else. It plays into how you make your decisions. It plays into how you think. And all of these automatic mental programs, like 99% of the programming that exists in your mind, your entire personality structure, is basically like a very elaborate survival calculator. And if we look at a personality model like the Enneagram, you can see these 9 archetypes of people's defense strategies in life. Some people is oriented more towards sort of self-promotion, building up their status, building up their pride and ego, climbing in social hierarchy, and like status orientation is one way of seeking safety. Others, they feel safe through belonging, and they can be very generous, giving people, but from a place of, if I give this, then I get security in exchange. Some people are more aggressive. These are people who might have learned that they have to be strong in order to survive. People often from maybe a rougher childhood environment. I'm a type 5 on the Enneagram, so for me, it's always been about figuring everything out. So the core program is kind of like, oh, if only I had more information, if only I knew more, then I would be safe. For others, it might be, if only I was stronger, then I would be safe. Or if only I could get everything right. If only I could make everything perfect and everything fit in the right box, then I could be safe. So you got all of these different kind of survival patterns, but all coming out of this same need for survival. And from that core sense of, I'm not safe. So survival orientation manifests as self-protection, either through fear, running away, or anger, which is attacking the source of the threat, or in terms of shame. So fear, anger, shame are kind of the 3 core patterns of fear, basically, or this wanting to survive. The third thing, so first we have this dependency on external authorities to make choices, dependency on external figures for safety and survival, and finally, what this leads to is what some people call the dualistic mind or a moralistic mind. So the thing about children is they learn from very early on that the way to survive and the way to get what they want is they have to be a good little boy or a good little girl. Every Christmas, mommy asks, have you been a good boy or have you been a good girl? And that's how you get the presents. This creates a worldview that is very black and white. Everything is about being good or bad. And then out of good and bad, we have all of those kind of sub branches of traits and labels and qualities and characteristics that we consider good and bad, courageous or cowardly, selfish or kind, so on and so forth. So reward and punishment kind of goes into that. And this creates entitlement. If you've ever asked a question like, why did this happen to me? What did I do to deserve this? That's the child in you speaking. That's a child that thinks that because you were a good boy or a good girl, you deserve to have good things happen to you. You end up basically seeing life as this moralistic scorecard of good and bad and right and wrong, credit and blame, reward and punishment. And this creates this split in the mind of dividing everything into good and bad, really disconnects you from reality and keeps you stuck in this sort of child archetype. Now, to tie this whole thing back into your purpose here in life, I'd like you to notice something, which is that nothing in this world, nothing in nature was created for itself alone. Let's take your body, for example. Your body is full of all kinds of interconnected systems. Your body is like its whole own little ecosystem, and each part of your body, each organ was created to serve all the other organs and the body as a whole. Yes? So imagine a heart that tries to keep all the blood for itself. So not only would the heart die because the rest of the body would die, but the rest of the body would die. So by trying to keep everything for itself, it kills the whole system. So nothing in your body was created to serve itself. Nothing in nature was created to serve itself. If you look at a tree provides oxygen, it provides fruit and food, it provides shelter, and it's part of a greater ecosystem, and each part in the ecosystem serves everything else, and that's why it's an ecosystem. So it becomes this whole self-sustaining body. Yes? Just like all the organs in your body and all the cells that make up the organs become its own self-sustaining ecosystem. There's a quote from the Tao Te Ching, which says, "It gives itself up continuously. That is why it endures." So this makes me think of like a cloud. A cloud is made up of these like water molecules, right? But in order to fulfill its purpose, it has to give itself up. The cloud has to essentially destroy itself and turn into rain so that it can nourish the earth and the ecosystem can continue renewing itself. Yes? In the same way, think of a mother who gives herself up for her child. This is what we call this lens out perspective. Rather than a survival orientation, you have a service orientation where you're willing to give yourself up for the thing that you serve. So I promise you, Whatever your purpose here on this earth in this lifetime is, it isn't to become the best and the coolest and the richest and the most famous and the highest possible status. It has to be something that serves the greater whole. This is the way everything functions in this universe. Everything is part of a greater whole. There are no closed systems in this universe. Everything is connected to everything else. Everything is dependent on everything else. I think there's a stat that says that 1 out of every 3 bites of food that we eat is dependent on bees for pollination. Without bees, we would lose 1/3 of our food supply. So our survival, our strength, our wholeness is dependent on bees doing their job. And the bees, to do their job, they're dependent on the flowers. And the flowers are dependent on the rain and the sun. So everything is connected. There is no closed system, which means that the strength of one system, even one single cell, if a single cell in your body is more healthy, that means your whole body is healthier. And that means if you're healthier as a whole body, as an individual, the whole collective body of humanity is strengthened because and through your strength. So in some sense, the entire universe is dependent on you being the most you can be. It's dependent on you fulfilling your potential, of you using your unique abilities to the highest capacity. So you have a purpose. Before you can fulfill your purpose, you first have to grow up. You have to step out of this childish self-orientation, survival orientation, this moralistic thinking. And 3, growing up is when you stop living for yourself alone. You move from survival orientation to a service orientation. You move from being dependent on external authority to finding your own inner authority. You move from being competitive and trying to battle your way up the ladders, the status hierarchies. You move out of being competitive and into collaborative with the rest of the whole, just like every cell in your body is collaborative with each other. You move from zero-sum thinking of like win and lose, like in order for me to win, somebody else has to lose. You move from a kind of a zero-sum win or lose way of thinking into an ecosystem way of thinking, where everything is part of a whole, and the strength of the whole is dependent on each thing being the best it can be. You move out of thinking moralistically in terms of good and bad and right and wrong, reward and punishment, and into being in accordance with universal law, in accordance with nature. Everything, again, was made to serve. Nothing was made for itself. So when you move into alignment with that, you move into alignment with nature. Yeah, I think that's it. I think those were the things I had to say today. I hope you liked it, and I hope to see you again in the next one.